I'd put targets on the back of Gabriel Pena, Trey Mitchell, and Davis Daly because those were the 3 guys that took top 3. I feel bad for even saying this guy. I haven't even said it to Trey and Gabe, but they had targets on their back.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, never. Like, boys.
So were they were second and third there?
Second, third,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. So they got targets, and
Yep.
you're going home motivated to train.
Yep.
Welcome to the Shaw Strength Podcast. I am your host, Brian Shaw, and today I am joined by Mr. Bobby Thompson. And Bobby is a kind of a mainstay on the strongman circuit now. You've been to World's Strongest Man 3 times. Mm-hmm. You've been to the Arnold twice, so you've been at the top level now for a few years and kind of making some noise, man.
You know, Brian, I'm just a guy that seems to find himself in the right spot at the right time.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that just kind of seems to be the way it works out for me.
Yeah. That's well, anyway, it's good to have you, man.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this is the first, I guess, kind of interview podcast that we're doing with the new wall in the podcast room. So everybody on video, if you're seeing that, definitely excited about how this came together. And Bobby said that he endorsed it. He liked it.
I do. Yes, I really do.
So that made me happy. I appreciate that.
I'm a sucker for hardwood and like the log cabin kind of feel.
Yeah.
So this is cool.
So it's making you feel homey.
Very much so.
All right.
Very much so.
I like that. So let's jump right into it, man. I want to know about Bobby Thompson growing up. That's what I want to know about. I want to know about your childhood, kind of, the family dynamic, that type of stuff. What was that like?
I'm a military brat. So my dad was in the Marine Corps for quite a long time, the majority of my childhood. And so we did move a lot. I'm lucky enough, though, that my dad had the majority of his career already taken care of before I was in the picture. So I moved around a lot, but I got to settle in at an early age, too. We started in Germany, spent some time in North Carolina, South Carolina, Hawaii, and then we ended up in Virginia. With some longer stays, some of the southern states, but Dad wasn't home very much. He deployed a lot. He had a very, very high speed job. So it was really just kind of my mom and my sister and I for the majority of it.
Interesting. Are you older or younger than your sister?
I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh, okay. So with that, do you remember living in all those places?
Germany's kind of hazy.
Okay. Because you would have been how old?
Oh, Jesus. I think we were there till I was 2.
Okay, so I mean, really young.
Yeah, really, really young. It made things kind of interesting because I was born in a German hospital.
Interesting.
Which meant I had dual citizenship for a little while.
Okay.
So when your dad's in the Marine Corps, it kind of like generally you'd go to a military hospital, which is American soil. That wasn't an option for me for whatever reason.
Okay.
So it made things kind of interesting growing up, trying to explain to people like what I was and where I was from.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit different story for sure, man. So you get to Virginia at what age did you settle in there?
I was in the 4th grade. So
okay, so still young, like you said early on.
Still young. It was a little bit of a culture shock just because in Hawaii the school systems were rough.
Okay.
They don't care for. Oh, excuse me. A lot of the population there doesn't care for the military presence.
Interesting.
The term is haole. It means outsider. And
really? So that you got kind of.
Oh yeah, I was
dubbed that.
I don't. Yeah, it was. They made it very clear, and it wasn't just like the parents or the older members of that society. It was the kids too. So when you're the chubby fat white kid that comes walking in, and our school was right off the base we lived on, so like everybody watched who was coming from that base. So yeah, it was rough. So I was homeschooled from 1st to 3rd grade. Just because after being there in kindergarten, it was rough. And being a teacher in Hawaii is one of the better jobs that you can get if you don't want to leave the island when you're from there.
Okay.
So a lot of the teachers would like turn a blind eye to like the white kids getting shit kicked out of them.
Oh man.
Oh yeah.
And I would assume at that age you start remembering this.
Oh yeah. That was, yeah. It was odd. It was very odd. It was, for me, it's kindergarten.
Yeah.
So I didn't come from necessarily a violent household. But when you're experiencing that at that young of an age, it does shape how you see some things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, I would imagine at that age, kind of rough to, think about and try to understand as well.
It was rough because you don't understand why they don't like you, but it's also like either the Samoan or the Hawaiian culture, like they're big people.
Yeah.
And kids either come out of the womb normal size or 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
So while I was a big kid, I wasn't the biggest kid.
Okay.
So I did not have the intimidation factor.
No, it's well, especially at that age, and you know, that's so you're I'm assuming your mom or your parents just kind of said, hey, we don't want to put you in that. We'll do the homeschool thing, and you know, then I would imagine your dad was probably looking to transfer when he could.
So it was one of those things where he retired out of Hawaii. Okay. So he had accepted and extended. He had extended his contract under the conditions that he got to stay where he was, or that we got to move together. But right before he was supposed to sign again, they said he had to go to Okinawa for 2 years unaccompanied. And that's when my dad's like, you know, I've done 23 years. I've done a lot. You know, he had different organizations kind of knocking on his door saying, hey, do you want to come play with us? Okay. And he just took advantage of it and picked up a job in DC, and we moved to Virginia.
So you got there in 4th grade.
Yes, sir.
So that's I would say then the bulk of your childhood. What was it like coming in 4th grade? I mean, was that, like you said, a little bit of a culture shock kind of, but.
Yeah, you know, so the biggest thing is I come from a relatively strict household.
Okay.
So there were things you did, things you did not do. It was very clear. And of course, in the public school system, it's not necessarily every kid's raised that way.
Yeah. So
I can remember sitting like the first day of school, the teacher asked us somebody a question and they did not respond with ma'am.
Oh, wow.
And my butthole puckered. I'm like, oh, what's about to happen to him?
Yeah.
And then nothing happened. And then also at that time, I'd lived so many places in comparison that it was very obvious that a lot of the kids had lived there their whole lives.
Okay.
And they had a very kind of narrow view of what the world kind of actually was and some things that happened outside. So me coming from what I had been through as a kid, seeing the different things, seeing the different places, I definitely had a hard time adjusting.
Yeah. Well, I could imagine. And you know, going into that situation, it's kind of all what you knew, you know, and so to have kids respond, and in all fairness, I think we probably need to get back to that a little bit more with kids and the way that they're raised. And that's a whole different topic we could probably get off on.
Yeah. Two dads talking. Yeah, no.
Just respect. Even this last week, I saw a video of this kid going up to this police officer and
the little kid.
Yeah.
And swinging on it.
How horrible.
Yelling at him. It's absolutely terrible. Partially because that little kid doesn't understand.
No.
And I mean,
one at that age, like what you were taught, hey, you're going to have respect. Very much the same for me.
Yes.
Like I was expected to act a certain way, and that's what I was taught, and that's what I did. And you know, you're a representation when you walk out of the house of your mom and dad.
Yes.
Right. And that's a big thing. But you know, I mean, we don't want to get off topic too much.
No. We could though.
We could. And it's that was very horrible to see that. But anyway, something else we could talk about at a different time potentially. But
yes, sir.
4th grade, you're kind of in your new home. You're getting accustomed to this. At what age did you start to think about sports? Was sports a thing growing up?
Oh, my parents'
childhood.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. My parents were very much we need to get you in something. Believe it or not, soccer was the first thing I did.
Okay.
And I did basketball very briefly, but I don't want to say I played it because I was young enough that no one was scoring baskets.
Yeah.
None of us knew what we were doing.
Yeah. At that age, I think it's great to do a variety of different things anyway.
Just to move. So I started with soccer, a little bit of basketball. Basketball did not last very long. And then when I got to Virginia, I started playing baseball.
Okay.
And then after baseball, it was football. But my problem was that at 11 or 12, I was playing with the 14 and 15-year-olds because I was so big. And then
so were they basing it off body weight?
Body weight. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and one of my really good friends at the time, who was in the 5th grade with me, had the same issues. But the issue was for me is that I sized out of any of the available weight classes after that year.
Gotcha.
So then I had to wait until middle school to continue to play football.
Okay. So you weren't even allowed to play.
Nope.
Your age and your size just didn't work.
So I was already, my age and size didn't work, and I was already playing up because, you know, when you're playing with 14, 15-year-olds, after that you move to travel teams, or those kids are playing high school or middle school.
Gotcha.
So there just really was nothing available in my area for the age bracket that would afford the weight class I would be in.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So what sport do you feel like, you know, going through, you know, that age time that you gravitated towards the most or enjoyed the most?
Football.
Okay.
Football was my first, that was my first love.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I was slow, but I was half decent.
So, and that kind of came about, what was that, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, somewhere in there?
So I didn't like it in the very beginning when I played when I was younger, but then when I got into 7th grade, I hit puberty very quickly and like a freight train.
Yeah.
So I walked into the 6th grade with almost a full mustache, Had a full mustache by the 7th grade. Oh, yes.
6th and 7th grade?
Yeah, Brian, I had the mustache that you wish you could grow now.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, buddy.
That's, I mean, obviously it carried over. I mean, look at you.
Yeah.
You can't really tell where your hair and your beard and anything stops. That's impressive, man. That's impressive.
But football was one of the first things that I did that I was really good at.
Okay.
I was never really a standout in school. Didn't really I played sports, but I never was that kid. So football for me was that first place where I got to shine.
Yeah. So where did you have a competitive knack at that age? Where do you think that came from, getting into it? And I mean, obviously football being a team sport, is that something you enjoyed from a competitive standpoint, or where were you at on that?
In the very beginning, it was. I really enjoyed the camaraderie, having the guys, having a team, the whole you have my back, I have your back kind of deal, belonging to something. I really enjoyed that. But after about the 8th grade, going into my freshman year, I was offered to go to varsity camp. Went to varsity camp and then decided that all of us freshmen that went, that we were going to go down and play freshman ball to kind of help develop the team.
Okay.
And something happened while I was at varsity camp where I'm looking around and these are grown men.
Yeah.
Like we're working.
Yep.
And then I go down and play freshman and these kids were not putting in the hours I was willing to.
Absolutely.
They just weren't. So that was my first dose of I was willing to work harder than most of the other people I was with, which I became very annoyed with.
Gotcha.
And then the next...
And it is. Yeah. I can relate to that 100%. I mean, if you're in a team sport and you're putting it in and you know that the person next to you is not, very frustrating.
Well, and I was the work marker for sprints, partially because I was one of the slowest kids on the team. I just was. And if I beat you in sprints, the insult was Thompson just beat you in sprints. Like, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of the insult. And I would turn around and look at guys like, I'm outrunning you right now.
Yeah.
Like there's a problem.
Yeah. So how big were you?
I walked into high school at 6'1", 225 pounds.
Okay.
And I was,
which is a good size for a freshman for sure. Yeah.
I am just genetically gifted.
Yeah.
I was a big kid, looked like a grown man. And I said I walked in as a freshman, but I started training with the high school football team in the 8th grade.
Okay.
So I started working with them then. A couple of us did.
Gotcha.
So when freshman year came around, we were already really, really developed and ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good size. So, I mean, you're physically overpowering, I would imagine, at that point.
Easily.
Everybody else in your age bracket, age group, whatever grade level, that type of thing.
Oh, easily. Yes.
Yeah. So when did you first get in the weight room then?
That was in the 8th grade when I was training. And I very quickly, it took me a while to realize what I was enjoying. I very quickly realized I was enjoying the training more so than actually going to play football. Like that early. Yeah,
really?
that early.
Okay.
I loved to deadlift and overhead press. I hated bench press. Squats were hit or miss.
So was it something, I mean, was it organized? I'm assuming it was pretty organized then, like where you're going in with the team and you had somebody directing you or that type of thing?
Oh, in terms of what we were doing in the weight room, they did the best they could, but it was run like most high school weight rooms are.
Yeah.
But no, I had coaches that were over top of me and they saw a lot of potential. And it was very much like, hey, so I had guys pushing me and riding me. But for me in the weight room, that was one of the first times where I saw the response of I'm putting this work in. The harder I work, the better I get.
Gosh, isn't that a powerful thing?
It was like the first time I had control.
Yeah.
Because like that was, I wasn't a very good student. I struggled in the classroom. It seemed like no matter what work I put in there, just the return was so minimal.
Yeah.
And I grabbed this and I was like, oh, I control this. This is mine.
So you could walk in, put the work in, you'd get better.
Yes.
And then it was just like, I want to go work harder.
Yep.
Yeah, it's such a powerful thing when that happens. And I would imagine, I don't know, earlier on, before you started lifting, how was your confidence?
Not very high.
Not high.
No, I mean, I played sports, like I said, and I was confident of what I could do there, but I was quiet. Like I was a chubby kid. I'm still kind of chubby now. Yeah. I didn't fit the social norm. Like I couldn't talk to kids about like pop culture and things, or I didn't have the same interests they did. Like I didn't play video games really until I got much older.
Yeah.
So like the things I could talk about and I could discuss and I enjoyed doing were things I was doing with older people.
Interesting.
So I had a real hard time fitting in with kids my age.
Yeah. But I would imagine your confidence went up quite
drastically.
A bit. So is it literally a life changer in a way?
100%.
Yeah.
It was odd. Like looking like a grown man that early on. Like that.
Well, I mean, a mustache in 6th grade is something else.
Yeah, right.
I mean, point out the elephant in the room, but that's awesome, man. But it's cool. It's cool to hear that story. And I think for a lot of, people out there, you do have to kind of find what fits you and what you can put your work into and what you can feel better about.
Yes.
Right. So you start to have this positive, and for some people like us, it's that training, right? It's a training outlet, and you can train and you get that positive return. You feel better about yourself every day. You're waking up and saying, man, I'm looking in the mirror. I feel like I'm putting this work in. I'm looking better, and my confidence is going up, and that type of thing. And for other people, it's a different outlet. And maybe for some people, it is the studying and the, hey, I went in and I got a better score on my test or whatever. So everybody's a little bit different, but for you, this is where I feel like you started to kind of come into your own in that spot.
It definitely was. And there was an unhealthy shift after I had stopped playing football.
Okay.
Because then weightlifting absorbed all of my time.
And when did that happen?
So
because you're saying you got into it. So freshman year, you're kind of floating between the varsity and back to freshman, not happy with some of the work capacity or work ethic, I should say, that the other freshmen are putting in. So at what point, and you're saying you're enjoying lifting training more than playing football, when did that stop, or what happened there?
So I had to stop playing football midway through August of my sophomore year. I've got some problems with my feet, and I was already due to have a final surgery at the end of the football season, which meant I wasn't going to get to wrestle that year, but it was fine. But I just had a real bad accident, had a misstep in the middle of August, and it went south, and I went to see my doctor, and he's like, we've got to do this now. He's like, you can't continue this way. I had ripped a bunch of bone spurs loose, and I had chunks of bone floating around. And he's like, we're going to do the surgery now. And I was like, cool, fix me now. I'll come back next year. Be my junior year. It's going to suck, but I'll put the work in the off season, get some highlights out there, go play college ball, which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he said, absolutely not. He's like, if you snap this fusion, which you will, there's not enough bone left in there to fix it. So that's where football kind of ended for me. And that was a really dark time.
What brought on the foot problems?
Genetics. I started having, so my big toe actually started kind of to curve under my foot when I was like 12. And I was still playing baseball, still running. After baseball practices or games, I'd have to sit there for 45 minutes, let my feet kind of de-swell so I could even get them off. And it was excruciating pain. Went through 4 or 5 doctors, couldn't find one. And then I found this one doctor who just came in the room, and he's like, I think I know what this is, but I need to take this to a conference. So he took the x-rays to a conference, threw them up on a wall, and it was called hallux rigidus. It's basically runner's knee or like Osgood Slaughter's, but in the major joint of the big toe. It's common in guys that are 40 years old that have been running their whole lives, not in 15, 16-year-old kids who've been suffering since they were 12.
So this came on and you started to notice it at 12.
It was bad. My parents and I thought I had 2 broken toes, and that
so it was same on both feet?
Same on both feet.
Okay.
My parents thought I had 2 broken toes, but then they weren't healing. That's all, well, you've really hurt them now because you played on them when they were broken. And then I had a doctor tell me it was growing pains. I had a doctor tell me that they're just broken. We're going to have to splint them and straighten them out. And then all it took was this doctor rotating my foot and taking the x-ray from a different angle.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So he's going in sophomore year and saying, at that point, had you had surgery on it?
I'd had 3 surgeries total up to that point. I had the 2 initial surgeries, which did not have the desired effects to the extent they wanted, and then I already had one of them fused. And we were just going to do the 4th and final one at the end of the football season.
To fuse it?
Yeah, to fuse it, and then it was just going to be, we're going to play what we're going to play.
But then you went in for a checkup or something, and that's where he discovered this?
No, we were doing a bag drill, and I remember it's a waste because this is probably the hardest I'd ever hit anybody playing ball. And I exploded and hit this kid that was holding the pad, and I pancaked him.
Okay.
But with what was wrong with my toes, they did not move at all. My big toes did not move. That time they did. That big toe went crunch, 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 crack as I rolled through my foot, tore a bunch of bone spurs loose that had developed, and I was laying on top of this kid. Thank God he was a friend of mine, and he heard the crunch and the pop, and he's like, how bad was that? And I was like, it's really bad. Wow. And it was just instant pain. And I rolled over, and the football coach was aware of my issues. He was very supportive.
Yeah.
Walked over, and he looked down at me. He's like, Thompson, get up. I'm like, Coach, we got a problem. And he's like, please just stand up. Yeah. And he helped me up off the ground, and I hobbled around. I didn't practice for the rest of the day, but I went to like tape and film work that we were having as that part of camp. And then I went and got an x-ray done, and you're supposed to have clear defined kind of spaces in between your joints.
Yeah.
It looked like a snowstorm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you couldn't see at all.
Man, gosh, that's frustrating, man. I mean, I didn't realize like it was all genetic. And you told me before, and we can talk about that, which certainly begs the question: how do you do strongman after all of that? Because I'm assuming you had to go back, had all the bone spurs and that cleaned up, then do the other fusion.
So they cleaned the bone spurs and did the fusion at the same time.
Okay,
they got that done, got it knocked out, and how I do strongman, I have an excellent pain tolerance.
Okay.
Like, it's amazing what you can live with when you don't have a choice.
Yeah. You're forced to do it.
Yeah. And it's, I like to think it's a series of things that happened because of that. One was, I ended up incidentally like addicting myself to pain meds when I was younger. I did everything right, but it was from that surgery. I was so overprescribed.
Okay.
And I did everything right. My parents had it under control. Nobody in my house stepped out of line. We didn't know, and I was laid up for so long, and then I go to school, which I missed the first 3 weeks of first 3 weeks of school that year. And the first day I'm there, I'm sweating, my stomach's off, I'm got a headache, vision's blurred.
Yeah.
Called my mom, said, "Hey, I'm sick, come get me." And I went home and just took some pain meds, laid down, and she said, "Are you feeling better?" I was like, "Yeah." And then my dad came in and checked on me. He and I discussed it, and that's when we realized that was withdrawal.
Wow.
And for me, that was...
And you were only taking what the doctor had given you. Exactly.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And it was just the worst part was I didn't ever feel good. Like, I didn't even get the good part of that experience.
Yeah. So you're never like on cloud nine.
No. So that loops back around into strongman because I've experienced what it's like to be laid up, to be stuck, to lose something I love.
Yeah.
And then I've experienced what it's like not to be in pain.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that sticks in my head. I wasn't hurting when I was on those meds.
Yeah.
But I came off them, and that's the way I felt. And for me, I would rather deal with the pain than ever have to deal with that again. So just kind of carrying that forward in life, and that's just kind of the mentality I kept. Like, if I'm hurting, I'm alive. I'm healthy if I'm hurting.
Well, for sure. I mean, pain is part of life.
Yeah.
It really is part of life. And I think that too many people out there experience some pain. And you could say it, I guess, physically. You could say it emotionally. I mean, these are things that are part of life, whether we want to deal with them or talk about them or whatever. That's just natural. So, number one, first and foremost, after being in the sport as long as I've been in the sport, I've seen some guys go down that path that got kind of drawn in to that and had to deal with some major addiction problems. So it's commendable that you were able to identify it pretty early on and not go further down the path. Yeah,
and that opened my eyes. Like, again, now we realize that I have an addictive personality, and like substances I have to be aware of. And I had a hard run with alcohol when I was younger, but all kids that turn 21 and look like a grown man do that.
Sure.
But it was always in the back of my head, and it was a very eye-opening thing. Like, okay, this is really easy for you.
Yeah.
It's really easy for this to happen. And my dad was the one that kind of figured it out first.
Okay.
Like, when I talked to him, so he was a big part of explaining that to me in words that I understood.
Which is great as well. It's
massive.
Yeah.
And when he did that, that was like, oh, okay. But it's just, and that moment affected me so much that it just carried through with the rest of my life. Like, I don't mind hurting.
Yeah.
Now, doing strongman, understand in my situation, I'm never going to be good at truck pull.
Yeah. Like, no, it's a different, absolutely. If your toes can't bend, that's a big problem.
Right. So and how do I do strongman is I've accepted truck pull, never going to be a star at, but that's okay. There are other events I can make it work. And it's just made me focus on my weaknesses and having to pay attention to the way my body works more so than others, which has given me several advantages, quite frankly.
Interesting. What do you feel like those advantages are?
So when we were training yesterday, I asked you about how you walked.
Yep.
That's because I'd watched you run medleys, and you run medleys just like you run a heavy yoke. So for me, I have that level I pay attention to detail to that level with myself as well.
Okay.
Like, I look at my feet multiple times a day. How am I walking right now? How am I stepping? Or
just from an attention standpoint,
just
because of where you're coming from and your background and all that. Yeah.
Just attention to detail, how my body moves, how somebody else's moves. It offers all sorts. There's all sorts of benefits that come from it.
Yeah. So it's kind of almost trying in a way to take a somewhat negative situation and try to spin it and get a positive out of it.
I don't believe there ever are actually very many negative situations. And I've coined the term, I'm the guy that doesn't lose anymore. It's because I'm constantly learning.
Yeah.
So like I didn't lose when I lost football. I didn't actually lose.
Sure.
I had to learn. I had to pick something else up. I had to figure other stuff out.
When football ended, right? So I mean, at that, trying to go back to that point in time, you're a sophomore with aspirations to play football in college.
Yep.
Right. I'm imagining you had set that goal or set some type of goal for yourself. You're putting the work in, and then it's kind of taken out from underneath you, right? How did you respond at that moment?
Not very well.
No,
not at all. So I was lucky enough. I had a coach that pushed me into the weight room. He said, "You're too big not to do anything." Check out powerlifting. I did that, but at the same time, I went from being the kid that if your son told you, "Hey, I'm gonna go hang out with Bobby Thompson," you know what? Good.
Yeah.
You go. Bobby's a good kid. You go hang out with Bobby. To the kid that if you saw me walk through the front door with your daughter, shoot me, like kill me early. Like
really,
I went from
so
kind of the golden
that big of a change.
Yeah, I was angry. Wow. I was depressed.
Yeah,
I didn't understand like why is this happening to me.
Of course,
I would go take pictures for the yearbook at the football games, and I'd be on the sidelines. I'd be watching these kids who were some of the kids that played with me freshman year that were now playing varsity, that weren't putting half the work I was in, and they're scoring touchdowns, they're making sacks, they're making tackles, the crowd's cheering, and I'm looking like,
that should be me out there.
It could be me out there, and I could be doing it better.
Yeah.
So that was, I was hostile.
Yeah.
Like I alienated a lot of my friends, myself. And then I met my psychology teacher, Byron Hoover, who incidentally did not know I was still a student at my high school until he saw me walk into his class, and he had already sent me a Facebook friend request on accident.
Really?
So he and I were friends on Facebook, and I walked into his class, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Oh," and I was like, "Yep." And then so immediately removed me off of Facebook.
Yeah.
But
so you had met him outside of.
He just saw I went to Mountain View, and I had some of my friends were students of his that had already graduated.
So I'm assuming that he thought that you had already graduated because you looked like you were
a grown man.
Yeah. Yep.
But
going back to that,
Well, I think he saw I was definitely having some struggles.
Yeah.
I think he really saw that, and he himself was passionate about lifting weights, so he always made sure to talk to me.
Which I'm sure having that type of communication was probably huge.
I still talk to him to this day.
That's amazing.
Like, yeah, and that was, I don't think he realized how big a role he played, but then there was something else he did for me. He was big into powerlifting when he was younger. And there's a gentleman at one point in time that had the world record for the reverse grip bench press. I can't remember what his name was, but he would go around to schools and do the motivational speaking.
Yep.
And he had gotten his autograph, and he had framed it. And he gave that to me my senior year I was leaving. And I still have that framed, and it sits on my nightstand next to my bed.
That's cool.
So like when little things like that I had these men that did for me, it made me feel like what I was doing was important.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this matters. Like you're not, and obviously when you're that devoted to that, your peers don't see it. They choose to kind of making fun of you for it. You don't have anybody you can really gel with.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, we're going to the movies Friday night at 6. I got to go train.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything I was trained for. Like I just knew I had to go lift.
So you were that committed at that age. I mean, that was your outlet. It sounds like that was your outlet, right?
Yeah.
Because and I've said this for myself a lot through life as I was going through different challenging times, ups, downs, whatever. The constant was always the weight room.
Yes.
Right. So, and I've said this before, but I could walk in there and the weights didn't care if I had a great day or a bad day or anything in between. Mm-hmm. The bar is still 45 pounds.
Exactly.
Right. And I can still go in and I can control that. Mm-hmm. And I could control that. And I feel like for you, it's kind of the same thing. It's like this, dream for football kind of got ripped out from underneath me. Mm-hmm. Go through a little bit of a rough period. And then you get back in, you have some great people that kind of, get in your ear a little bit and talk to you. And then you've got this constant that you can still go back to with training, right?
And there was an incident. I was in the gym it was a Friday night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I was training. It was my senior year, I believe. And there's a gentleman who had always seen there that late on Friday nights as well. And he finally came up and talked to me one day because I had a Mountain View shirt on.
Okay.
And he goes, "You graduate from Mountain View?" I go, "No, I still attend." He's like, "I'm the lineman coach." I'm like, "I know who you are." Like he wasn't the same. The coaching staff had switched out.
Okay.
My old ball coach became the assistant principal. So, and then another coach came in. And I was like, "I know who you are." He's like, "Why don't you come play?" I'm like, "I don't know if you've talked to anybody, but," because it was big news that Bobby Thompson could not play
I would imagine.
The strongest kid in the county could not, the guy your dad wanted to work out with could not play football.
Absolutely.
So, man, just come by and talk. I'm like, no. Like, and it hurt, like, having the conversation with him.
Absolutely.
And I finally snapped at him and he walked away. And he went over and told some of the kids, and they told him, like, yeah, it's Bobby. Like, just leave him alone. Like, it's just kind of known. And then the head coach came up to me because I was out back training one day at the school because they had big tires. I was doing stupid stuff, picking them up, pressing them over my head, doing the hip thrust up and overs.
Just abnormal things.
Right, yeah. It was exciting to me.
Yeah.
And they were walking up from one of the fields, and he came over, come play ball for me. Nope, can't do it.
Yeah.
Come play ball for me. Nope, can't do it. You'll never run a step. And I looked at him. I was like, what am I going to do, sit on the bench? He's like, no, you'll come play line. You'll never run a step. I was like, okay. I was like, I played offensive line and defensive line. You're going to stick me on the field and think I'm not going to charge the play?
Yeah.
And I was like, I just kind of laughed at him and walked away, which I felt bad because it was disrespectful, and I understand what he was trying to do. And I was like, but those were, like, it made me almost hate football.
I would imagine. Yeah, you kind of almost have some resentment there to begin with.
Yep.
And then these guys don't, the coaches, and in all fairness, it's not the exact same thing, but for me, when I was in high school, basketball was my passion, and I had set the goal to play in college, and I was doing everything that I could. So I'm, up training before school, after school. So during football season, I would do kind of my own strength and conditioning type of program, and I would get up and practice and do all these things. And so, for me, the football program at my high school at that time was not very good, right? So I think they literally, my 4 years of high school, won like 4 games.
Oh, God.
Right. So it was just kind of a thing where the guys on the team, and it relates to what you were saying to your teammates not working as hard. A lot of the guys would just kind of not go to practice, or it was just kind of it's a joke to a lot, which sucked because, the coaches came and talked to me, and they're like, Brian, we really need you to play. We really need you to do this.
You had it worse than I did.
Yeah. So they were all over me, but I was like, look, man, like I was so dedicated to what I was trying to do that I couldn't accept that the guys weren't going to take it seriously. And I was like, I do not lose. I don't want to lose. Right. And so if I'm going to come in, I would give it 100%, but I've got my path figured out where I want to go. So I can understand, because it was one of those things where the coaches, hey, here's Brian Shaw. We need him on the field. And it's very much the same. Here's Bobby Thompson. We need him. But they don't understand what you've gone through. So I can imagine the frustration and how that made you feel.
And then I laugh at it now because my senior year, I graduated at 265 pounds with visible abs at 6'1".
That's insane, man.
So like, I could, looking back at it now, could you imagine being a football coach and watching that walk around?
No, of course.
Yes,
you're a specimen at that. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You're a specimen, and the physical ability is not a question. It's just, unfortunately for you, your feet didn't allow you to do that, right? Exactly. So, I mean, and I don't think there's any doubt now, like you said, with athletic ability, genetics, et cetera, work ethic on top of that, what you could have done had you not had that, right? So it's such an interesting thing, like for me, because I can tell how driven you are in what you put your mind to do, right? And the discipline that goes along with that, which is amazing. So, it's this patch in life that I'm sure you can look back on and say, okay, I went through that, but you, in one way, shape, or form, and probably multiple ways, got stronger from going through it.
That's why I'm the guy who can't lose.
Yeah.
Like, that's because, like, it was a loss, but like, there's so much came from it. I wish I'd known all the positives that were going to come, because it probably would have made that a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because there were other things happening in my family life that made life very, very difficult.
Okay.
So I wish I could look back at that point in time. I wish I could have told myself, like, hey, you're good.
Yeah.
Just stay tough. Do what your dad taught you to do. Stay tough.
Sure.
And it's all going to work.
Yeah.
But the fact that I didn't know that, it's given me what I have now.
Yeah.
And I couldn't change that if I wanted to.
Sure. So rough spot, meaning like family stuff going on, or?
Yeah. I was never very close to my dad.
Okay.
Just because
he was gone so much?
He was gone, and like I won't get too in detail in my father's career. Those are his stories to tell, but he had one of those jobs that you didn't come home from.
Okay.
Like he came home, he was distorted. Like, he was just like a lot of other guys in the military doing cool jobs.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't, when he was home, I was scared of him.
Okay.
And then when my parents decided they were going to divorce, they never at any point in time made it a pick sides, but it was very obvious what side was the right side to be on. So with that being said, my dad and I had to stay in that house with my mother and sister, and it was very volatile. It was very hostile. It was them against me. Then my mom got a job at my high school.
Oh boy.
So I was surrounded by it by then. And this was my junior year. And my sister's still going to the school. And it was, I would leave the house and it was them against me at my own school.
Oh man.
I'd come home, hostile environment. And then, and then there was a relationship with one of my teachers. Like, it was just, it was rough, man. Like, it was,
that is rough.
Like, it was
especially at that age. Jeez.
Well, then it works where I was going. My dad, he didn't get an apartment right away because he was figuring out what was going to happen, basically. What was he going to do? So I call him. I'm like,
what do you want me to do?
Like, Dad, I need something. And then he got an apartment. I went to live with him.
Okay.
It started with, I was just over there on weekends. And then things really hit the fan one day. And I was like, and I went over to his place, slammed the door, said, I ain't going back.
Yeah.
I was like, I've got my truck. Like, I'll go somewhere else, but I'm not going back there.
Wow.
And that's how it started. But then it's two of us living together.
Yeah.
I'm 16.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 16, 17. I'm pissed. I'm angry. I look like a grown man.
Yep.
Like, and then my dad is single for the first time in 17 years. And he and I didn't have a super close relationship before all of this happened.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, world's falling apart.
Yeah.
Like it or not, I'm what you got.
Sure.
So it was, all that was happening.
That's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot to process, especially at that age.
Yeah.
Man, I can imagine that hardened you up a lot. Like, you know, you're kind of thrown into the deep end in every aspect, right?
Yeah.
And it's you know, hard enough if you've got a family situation that's stable, right? And then you were having to go through that other situation with, you know, football and your feet and like all these things, man. That's crazy. So you get to the end of high school. What happens from there?
So I was staying with my dad.
Okay.
I was going to school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was going to school at a community college. I knew, like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to be doing something though. So I was working in a gym. And then I got a job, like I was working in a gym. I got a job bouncing. I was a full-time student. And I got my associate's degree. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I want to go be a personal trainer.
Yeah.
I'm still training, still lifting. Still bouncing in bars at 18 years old. Like, I was like, oh, maybe I want to go be a personal trainer. So I talked to my dad about it. And I was like, hey, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay. He's like, what's the education for this look like? And I showed him the cert I wanted. And he's like, go. He's like, do you have the money? I said, yep. And he's like, okay, do you need more? I was like, no. I was like, I have this.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, so make sure you can pay rent while you have this. And then I studied. I got my personal training certification. Got a job at a gym rather quickly.
Okay.
Started working in gyms, and then it just kind of blossomed from there. And then luckily enough, the gym I was working in is where I got my start in strongman.
Interesting.
That's where it all began.
So when did that start then?
Connor Nave and Jordan Pepper. Yep, two kids I really didn't know.
Okay.
They were kids. They were men. And they were coming to the gym, and I was known as kind of like the strong guy that no one really spoke to.
Okay.
I was like, okay. And then they said, hey, we're doing this contest. You want to do it? I was like, yeah. I was like, okay, let's do this. And I bought some equipment. And then one of the guys in the gym that he also bounced in a crew that I bounced with, I didn't know, but he had competed way back in the day with like Matt Mills, if you're familiar with that. He was around for the start of like NAS.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he was bouncing with us, and he was a scary looking dude.
Okay.
Like that was like show up to train in the middle of the day in his work boots or his bike boots, blue jeans, covered in tattoos, doom crew and skulls across his knuckles. He's covered from head to shin, bald head, big dude. I'm like, and one of my friends said, well, you know, he used to do it. And I looked at him and I was like, and he can keep doing whatever he's doing by himself. Like, that's not somebody I want to. And I walked over to him. I'm like, hey man, like I'm doing this. I was like, if you have time, any pointers?
Yeah.
And that Zane Engel, he was the guy that got me into it and kept me into it.
Okay.
And he was I surpassed his level of expertise, but he still stayed in the picture.
Gotcha.
I mean, he drove me to Florida on his dime to compete. And he was one of the first guys that told me, he's like, you know, you could go to World's Strongest Man.
Yeah.
Like he was the first guy to say it. I was like, I can. And he goes, yeah. And I believed him.
And you were how old?
My kid had just been born. I'm 29 now. I was 23, 24.
Okay. So you kind of got out of high school, a couple of years personal training, still training, and then at 23, 24, you get introduced to this, get these guys, and they kind of open the door to, hey, you can compete. And
well, the two guys that asked me to do it with them were clueless, like I was.
Okay.
They just found it online. Like I'd always loved strongman.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how accessible it was. Like they were as clueless as I was. They were very strong, but they didn't know. And I was, even then with them, I was the one who was like, okay, I need to find this equipment.
Yeah.
Like I bought my farmer sandals. Like I bought.
So did they have any equipment, or
no?
Or you guys were all just kind of like, hey, we want to do this, but we got to figure out how to get the stuff. And
there was no we. They said they wanted to do it. I looked it up.
Okay.
And then I started getting the equipment arranged that I needed.
So you took the bull by the horns, basically.
I did. And I let them use my stuff. We worked out together a little bit, but like there wasn't like a group, real team effort between the three of us happening.
Okay.
So I reached out, I spent what little money I could on my farmer sandals, and then was lucky enough when I told this gentleman what I'm doing, he brought in a keg for me that he had filled. He had a big dog circus dumbbell.
Gotcha.
He brought that in, and he brought I had bought a log, but I didn't know what I was buying. So I bought like an 8-inch log off Amazon. And I think the first day I used it, I hit like a 305 with it, and it was atrocious.
With 8 inches.
Yes.
Wow.
It was atrocious.
That's a tiny log to clean.
Right.
For sure.
And then he had a 10-inch.
Okay.
And he brought that in, and we used to hide our equipment in like this back room of the gym. It was an unfinished room they kept locked.
Okay.
That was just part of the building. They had no idea what they were doing with it, but there were glass doors. And I used to sneak my equipment in there and hide it. And then when he would come in on his lunch break, we would train with whatever the implement was.
Okay.
And it was like, just like, hey, like you're going to have to use these eventually. Let's figure out how to use them.
Yeah.
And then
it's just kind of a trial and error, pull it out. Let's figure it out. Get better at it.
He had the basics, but he had also been out for a little while. Hadn't done it. So
Sure.
but yeah, he lugged it all in and we kept it there. And then
that's cool. Yeah.
that was, and like, it was bad. Like we were dropping, I did not know what I was doing, and we didn't have crash pads. So we had a circus dumbbell.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, you can't always control how that comes down.
No, of course.
So there were more than one occasions where we were busting that floor up, tearing the turf.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Causing some damage.
Yeah. But even then I still worked there, and I don't want to say I didn't care, but
yeah,
for whatever reason, I just knew I could probably get fired for that, but I wasn't worried about it.
Yeah.
And I would like to know why, but I was just engrossed.
Yeah. It was just something you were doing and you were loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, man. So from that point, when did you kind of take the leap to compete?
So I did that first contest, and then after that first contest I won. Okay. And after that first
where was that?
That was in Richmond. It was at a real small gym in Richmond, Virginia.
So kind of like a local.
Yeah, it was tiny. Like it was light. And I can remember when I was texting Zane through the whole thing. Okay. He's like, hey, just let me know how you do.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm texting him through the whole thing. And I get back to the gym, and he's like, do you want to do this for real? And I was like, what do you mean for real? Like, I just won my contest, dude. Like,
yeah,
I am doing this for real. And he goes, no. And then he came in with the spreadsheets, and I was training twice a day.
Okay.
And then we found a CrossFit gym where we could go keep our stuff at, that we could use their rubber plates, their crash pads. So then I had a CrossFit gym I had to key to for a little while, and it had no AC. So it's 90 degrees out in Virginia. We're doing log press, keg carries. He would drive there on his lunch break, and then I would have another session in the evening that he had designed for me.
Gotcha.
And it was just, then I went to a contest, Barry Bond Perkins. I think we talked about that in Tyson's Playground.
Absolutely.
I went and did that contest, and my coach was like, we don't do novice, we do opens now.
Yeah.
And we did that, and I won that one, and then I took a shot at my pro card and got destroyed.
Okay. How far into it were you? Did you do an open contest that you won there?
That was my second contest.
Second.
Yeah.
So you just went from novice, won that, open, won that.
Yep.
And then jumped into at that time was it
It was a Platinum Plus.
Platinum Plus. So they had changed over from a Pro-Am situation to a Platinum Plus. Okay.
That was actually, and it still wasn't a super common situation, but that was actually, so he drove me to Florida for that one. I got the place I was working to get me a car.
Okay.
Or to kind of, it was a nutrition shop to kind of sponsor me.
Yeah.
Just give me the money up front.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we rented a car, we drove down, and that was actually the first time I saw Trey Mitchell and Gabriel Pena.
Okay. What year is this?
That was 2016, 2017, maybe.
Okay.
I'd have to look back. It was early, it was my third contest. It was early on.
Okay.
It was all within the same year.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'd have to look back to get you the exact date, but
So this is a Platinum Plus, so you're walking in there probably feeling pretty good after having won.
Oh, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get my pro card. Life's going to take off. Bobby Thompson's going to be the new stud on the team.
Yeah.
I placed like middle of the pack out of like 15 or 20 guys.
Gotcha.
And it was the third time I'd ever carried a yoke, and it was an 800-pound yoke for like 60 feet. And at that time, I'd never carried a yoke for more than like 10 feet total.
Okay.
So like it was like a stone of steel, and I had hardly ever touched an Atlas stone.
So you're kind of just diving in, going for it.
But there was a log for reps, and it was me and Trey Mitchell. It was the first event, and I tied Trey on that contest. So log has always been since the very beginning for me.
Just from when you touched it, felt good. And you're very much known for your pressing ability with especially with a log. But yeah, man, that makes sense. So you walked in there, tie for first. So that had to feel good. So walking away from that, what was the thought process, right? So you took middle of the pack there. Were you more motivated to go train?
I was very motivated to go train.
Okay.
I had put targets on the back of Gabriel Pena, Trey Mitchell, and Davis Daly because those were the three guys that took top three.
Okay.
Which Davis never competed again after that contest.
Okay.
He's doing very well for himself now. He's got like a big social media presence and does training, and so I think he just got the pro card to kind of add to his repertoire, be able to say, I've done this.
So he had won that. Then.
He won that contest, and he was a little guy too.
Interesting.
That was also kind of a gut check.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't a big dude, and he stomped everybody.
Wow. Okay.
So that was a solid experience to have. But that day moving forward, and I feel bad for even saying this because I haven't even said it to Trey and Gabe, but they had targets on their back.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, never. Like, boys.
So were they were second and third there?
Second, third,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So they got targets, and
Yep.
you're going home motivated to train.
Yep.
So when's the next opportunity to compete against them?
Shaw Classic.
Really?
I think so.
Yeah. So you didn't see him. So they.
Oh, no. You're saying, okay, no, I thought you were asking when my next chance was.
Yeah.
I didn't see them until.
Or when did you do your next kind of Platinum Plus?
So after that, we decided to play the game a little differently because then we started exploring what a pro card meant in America.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, there just wasn't a whole lot of opportunity. So then we're like, okay. And then I heard about the Arnold Amateur. And I sat down with Zane, my coach. I was like, hey, do you know what this is? He's like, I've heard of it. And then we looked at it and we're like, oh, wow. Like, we need to get qualified for this. And I was like, okay. So we went and did a show. I qualified for it and had like 9 months to train.
Okay.
And then I went to the Arnold Amateur, and Gabe was supposed to be there that year. He had gone a few times, but I think he broke his hand or something.
Okay.
And then I didn't see Trey Mitchell again. If I remember correctly, I didn't see Trey again until the OSG in 2000. I want to say it was 2018.
Okay. So a couple years.
Yeah, and then I beat him there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So but you guys kind of, so it's funny how that happened, where the three of you kind of got to, kind of butt heads, so to speak, early on.
Yep.
I mean, especially, and I don't know how long exactly they had been competing or anything. Maybe they had a little bit more experience than you did. It sounds like it was
a lot.
Yeah. Your third contest in, that's a big leap. But it sounds like you were able to kind of make some progress by going and getting that experience, right? And then you come back and train. So how long did it take you to get from that point, doing your first Platinum Plus, to then earning that Arnold, amateur, getting into that? I mean, was that pretty immediate where you said, hey, this is my route, that's where I'm going to go?
So we had picked out 2 contests, and we had given ourselves a lot of time to train and get ready for it.
Okay.
So I didn't do a whole lot of amateur contests, but I spaced out the contest I did. So it probably, from that Platinum Plus, I would say it was about a year before I was at the Arnold Amateur.
Okay.
Yeah, about a year.
And then how did that go?
I won.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was the plan. Like we had talked about it. At that point in time, the pro card meant nothing to me. Like, I don't want the pro card. I want the big stage.
So that was then, was that 2019?
Yep, that was 2019.
Okay, so that qualified you then for 2020.
It did.
For the Arnold, and then that was the first Arnold that you did.
Yes.
Right. So was that, now at that level, did you do anything else between that time, or was hey, I won my spot for the Arnold next year, I'm going to go back and just train and get ready for that?
That's all it was.
That's it.
Nothing else mattered because the contest I qualified for the Arnold with, I could have skipped the last event.
So you were in a good spot.
I won all 5 events. That
awesome.
was a 3-stone series. So I actually did okay with that one.
Yeah.
But that's just because I was so much stronger. than the guys that showed up that day.
That makes sense, man. But it's a good spot to be in, especially, prepping and getting ready for something and then executing like that is very, very good.
Yep.
Right. So getting ready for and stepping onto the Arnold stage, how was that? I mean, I know that you had an injury that year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was rough. Like that was one, I was already nervous. I had gone out and there was some contest in between my amateur world championship win and then the Arnold. I traveled, what had I done? I want to say I had done 2 or 3 contests, 2 international at that point. Okay. And one of them I got to dust my feet off with like Jeff Corona and a couple guys.
Oh, cool.
So, and the big reason Dion pushed me to do that was because she's like, I'm not sending you to the Arnold to get shell shocked.
Yeah.
Like I want you to at least seen these guys. And I was still shell shocked when I got there. But leading up in that prep, 8 weeks out, my uncle passed very suddenly. It was like I had to say goodbye over the phone on the way to the gym one night.
Man.
And then like the next week, like I tore my bicep.
Oh, wow. So that's I mean, physical blow, which is a mental blow, and then a big mental blow.
Oh, it was
like
bad.
That. Yeah.
It was bad. And I ask myself if I did the right thing on that one. Because, I mean, I went injured. Like, it was a fresh bicep tear. That's what it was. But then I look back at those nights where, like, my coach and I were in there, like, duct taping over top of a sleeve.
Yeah.
Like, all we got to do is just keep blood from getting to it, and you won't hurt. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
And that was, like, I think about those nights and people walking into the gym and, it's like, hearing me scream in the back of the gym while he's wrapping my arm.
Sure.
And then it's like, okay. Like, you know what? Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Like, this feels too right to be working this hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, I almost quit. That was a make or break for me.
Yeah. Well, it's a big test, man. I mean, I have, as you know, I've had several of those, moments and it's a gut check. It's a gut check. And a lot of people will not understand that.
Yeah.
Right. They won't understand going to that level, going through that kind of pain, going through, that and the easiest thing in a moment like that would be to hang it up.
Just to quit.
Quit. Yep. And when you don't quit in a moment like that, there's something special about that. And I don't know how to explain it to people out there. And I know that a lot of people in certain things that I've explained over the years that I've gone through and fought through and whatever, people still don't understand it. And I don't expect them to understand it, but I can understand where you were at in that moment.
Yes.
Because I've walked through it. I've walked through the path. And so there's something to it, man. And it's special. And so for you to fight through that the way you did, then show up there, it takes a special individual to go through that and then execute, So I commend you on that, man, because it's not easy.
Well, it's nice to know somebody else gets it.
Yeah.
Like there are comparable things, but it's not comparable unless it's that contest.
Yep.
And oddly enough, you tore your bicep at the Arnold one year.
Yep.
On a questionable event selection. And
fair to say that, yeah.
Like a week, like it was a good week where I was pondering, am I actually going to do this? Because even my coach was like, man, like he didn't ever say do it or not do it. He just said, be able to sleep with it.
Yeah.
He's like, whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's like, if you go there and you give it everything you got, he's like, let's be honest, you're not a contender.
Yeah.
He's like, give it everything you got. He's like, if you can fail that way and be okay, well, let's go fail hard.
Yeah.
But about a week in, I was getting to that point where like I have to decide now. And I was just on my phone, popped up YouTube, and then that video of you cleaning that axle with a torn bicep came up. And I was like, okay, all right. I'm not religious. I'm not spiritual, but
sure.
Data has arranged itself. And it's like, hey man, like
here's your shine.
You got something to do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cool moment.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool, man. It's that was a very, very tough contest to battle through for me. And, I would say, moments like that, there's a couple, and I ended up in 4th that year with the Arnold. And, I say that's, people don't quite understand what I was battling through on the back end. So to come out in 4th, and to be fair, I did actually have a chance to win. I was in 2nd place going into the last event, which, looking at the Arnold as a whole, you have a bicep off, pretty crazy that you're still in contention. And I was proud of that, man. So it's something, like I said, I can understand 100% where you're at. And like for you to see that video of me doing it
at that moment.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you ever gauge yourself based on like pain you've experienced? Meaning like, so I know like I've hurt myself before bad.
Yeah.
And I know like in my head after it's all said and done, I really wish I didn't think this way, but I'll sit there and think, I'll be like, I know I can go a step further than that now.
Yeah.
Like it's going to take at least one step further than that to shut me off. I was like, okay, so like I'm no longer concerned about any pain I'm going to feel until it's one step past what I felt before.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, I've been through some very painful things, you know, and that was certainly one of them. You know, I think that, you know, I kind of almost put myself into kind of a state of shock in a way, you know, especially doing the frame carry with the bicep off. That was, you know, I literally couldn't walk for a second. Like it was that bad that I was like, okay, am I going to pass out here? But you get done. And again, you move through that, but you go to a different level in your head and say, hey, you know what, you didn't die.
No.
Right. and I very much think that way. And I kind of, for me, it goes back to some of the stuff that I got in college, and I had a very military minded coach at that time. And he would kind of take us to that breaking point. Right. And you wouldn't, and again, same thing, you wouldn't die. You were okay.
Yep.
Right. And you not very many people in life get to that type of spot where you go to that next level, because you in order to get there, you have to have something that's very, very challenging, something that hurts, something that is very much testing you to that level. And then it opens up a new area. So it is kind of that way. Like, and I have said that before. Look, if I made it through that, I can make it through anything.
Well, and for me, it started at such a young age.
I
was diagnosed with Osgood Slaughters in one of my knees when I was like 5 playing soccer.
Yeah.
And it was one of those where doctors were like, well, it's going to get a little worse if you keep playing, but it's not like, this is not going to be life altering. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go play soccer at 5, 6, 7 years old with runner's knee. Cool. And my feet go bad.
Yeah.
I have my issues with my feet. Start having when I'm 12. I'm still playing baseball. I'm wrestling. I'm playing football. So for me, that conditioning started so young.
Like you said, you're dealing with pain constantly.
Yeah. And that's, I think it works against me some days.
Yeah.
Like just because I will push myself too far.
Yeah. No, it's hard. You know, again, I can't fully understand walking around in your shoes with something like that.
Your feet wouldn't fit.
No, they they would not fit. They would not fit. But you know, there's different things that, you know, I know for myself. I dealt with some real bad plantar fasciitis.
Yes.
And but for years, like a few years. And I remember.
You have an idea then.
I remember. I mean, there were days where, you know, I would stand up, you wake up or have to go to the bathroom, whatever, and it is like a knife.
Yep.
You know, shoving in your foot. And so there's stuff like that, you know, I definitely at certain points doing strongman, dealing with that was difficult, because I would go train and my feet hurt just so bad.
Just to breathe. It gets bad when you take a deep breath. Yeah.
So I can relate in that aspect, and obviously the bicep. So, you know, it's ironic, some of these injuries and different things, but the level that you get to, you know.
Well, have you ever had a doctor working on you and they'll ask you like when you tore, like, or like a recovery specialist, oh, when did you tear this? I can feel the scar tissue development. I tore that.
I've not had that specifically.
That was when I started. Jericho. You've met Jericho before.
Yeah.
He's my recovery guy. He's my chiropractor. He does everything for me.
Okay.
But like the third day he was working on me. When'd you tear your hamstring? I tore a hamstring.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know.
He can feel it.
Yeah. He could feel like where the scar tissue had developed and looking at where things are pulling. And he's like, he's like, my money's on you tore a hamstring at some point in time. I'm like, okay. Then he goes up to like my teres minor. And he's working, he's feeling, he's like, we've got a lot of scar tissue here. He's like, there's a real good chance this was torn at some point.
Yeah.
Really? He goes, yeah. I'm like, oh, all right. Then he flips me over. He starts working on my pec. And then on this arm where my biceps are all messed up.
Yeah.
He's pushing on my pec. He's like, you get a lot of shoulder pain over here? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you got a lot of scar tissue around that pec major too. And I'm just like, oh, God.
Just keep going.
I was like, stop telling me. Do what you need to do to fix this, but I don't want to hear anymore.
Yeah, it might hurt. I don't need to hear that I tore it anymore. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's funny, man. So you get on the Arnold stage. You get there. How was that?
That year, it was terrifying.
Okay.
In the very beginning, it was terrifying just because the Arnold Amateur, which a lot of guys don't do another contest in between those two.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough that Dion kind of pushed me, like to Lithuania, to Canada, all over the place. But that contest is not a good precursor for the big show.
Sure. It's a different level for sure.
It's not. But then I also came in under the gun with my bicep, and I already knew and had the conversation with my coach, like, we're not going to make a big splash this year.
Yeah.
Not at this contest. So knowing that kind of gave me peace of mind. Like, hey, let's go. Like, let's go out and do, like, give what we have, but what you have doesn't matter right now.
Yeah.
So it was very scary in the beginning, but then afterwards I really kind of settled in.
Oh, that's great, man. So from there, that kind of then opened the door for World's Strongest Man.
So I believe it did. In 2020, I was listed as an alternate. I had earned a spot to a North American Giants Live contest, didn't quite make the turn.
Yeah.
Just missed. And then I get a call for a alternate position, and I was already signed on for another contest, and I politely said, hey, I'm sorry, I can't set that time aside when I'm already committed here.
Yeah.
Like, it just wouldn't be right. Like, and then I got a call a few weeks later. I was like, hey, do you want to come? I'm like, well, yes, I do, if I'm playing ball. And cool, sign this paperwork. Here's your medical stuff. Get it done quick. And then I was 4 weeks later, and that was even rough because I had a girlfriend that we had just broken up, and we were living together with her kids full time and my kid part time.
Yeah. And
we had just split, and I was living out of boxes, sleeping in my best friend's storage room in his house on an air mattress.
Oh man.
And I get the call, and it was like the universe had taken some shots at me. Yeah. Pretty hard. Like, it was a long-term relationship. I wasn't doing very well with being over. And I get the call from Worlds.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're turning around. And then the night before I was supposed to fly out, I'm laying there on my air mattress, staring at the ceiling. It's like, you know what? We're good.
Yeah.
We're going to make this one. This one almost got you, but you're good. Air mattress pops.
Oh boy.
And then I'm just watching my feet get higher and higher as my head sinks.
Yeah.
I just lay there. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah. I'm good.
I can't be screwed with right now. I'm flying to World's Strongest Man tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm just going to lay here, and this is going to be what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good mental outlook, man. So, so you get there, battle through that. 2020 was a different year, obviously.
It was.
Yeah. I mean, for that to be your first experience at World's Strongest Man was unique.
Very.
Yeah, unique to say the least. But yeah, man, you've made some strides since then. I mean, everything has come on, and then you currently hold the American log press record.
Yes, that is correct. I do.
Yeah, yeah. And what weight is that for everybody?
478.5. I believe.
So, and that's in pounds.
Yes, so 478.5 pounds. I believe it's like 217 kilos, something like that.
Roughly
217 kilos.
Yeah, which is great, man. So I mean, you had your sights set on that, and then broke that record, which obviously is knocking on the door of the world record. I'm assuming you have your sights set on that at some point.
I do. It's definitely something I want to do, and it was something I was looking at pretty hard for a while.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking more and more, and as I was training for 2 world records in particular, I noticed that my performance started to really decline.
Interesting.
And it's like, okay, I was like, I know I can do this stuff. I already know I can do it. I just need to train to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And for me right now, I feel like contests are more important than world records.
That's interesting.
Just in terms of remaining relevant.
Yeah.
And then strongman is not my end all be all. It is my means to my end.
Yeah.
And I needed to really step back and start looking at it like a business.
Yeah.
Like I need, and contest is contests are the business side of the sport.
Yeah. 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 That's an interesting perspective, especially coming from you, I think, when it comes to like a record. And what's your take on what kind of spinning off of that records in the sport? I mean, what do you think? I believe
there are some that matter.
Okay.
I believe the log press matters. I believe the deadlift matters. I believe the circus dumbbell matters, because in strongman there's any endless number, but I think we get in trouble when we start doing like obscure exercises. So it's like all of a sudden, there is no real record written down for certain events. Like if somebody came out with like, I want to do a Conan's wheel world record.
Yeah.
That's like, why? Like there's no, I guarantee you some guy in backcountry Idaho has done twice what you have on a Conus wheel, 2 times as fast, 2 times as much, 2 times as far.
Yeah.
So I do believe that we're becoming a little too concerned with them as a whole in the sport, but I do believe there are certain ones like the 500 kilo deadlift.
Yeah.
The 505 or the 515 log press, like these are massive numbers and these are key events. Like you are seldom going to find a contest that doesn't have a log press or a log press or a deadlift.
Sure.
So those are the events I think they matter. But
more kind of staying with the mainstream, so to speak, events.
Yes, but there needs to be some standardization, like where Big Z set the record with a metal log.
Yeah,
and then did Bibby break that record? I can't remember. No.
Well, I think technically yes, he did get a down call. I think there's a little bit of controversy.
That's
on
right.
It. Yeah,
But then Bibby did it with a wood log, didn't he?
Yep.
And then I set the American record with a wood log, which is not a world record. But in my mind, we do need to standardize. If you're going to set an American record or a world record, it needs to be on a wood log.
Yeah.
It's just little things like that. If you're going to do it on a deadlift bar has to meet these exact specs.
Yeah.
Like I would like to see some of that happening a little more often.
So, I mean, when I was coming up, and this is an interesting conversation too, it was more like the deadlift record was just on whatever bar was in front of you. Right. So like you go to a contest, like when I set the deadlift world records at World's Strongest Man, I was on a very stiff bar with big globes and it was a tough lift, right? Like a very tough lift. You didn't get bent out of the bar, nothing. Right. And then it kind of evolved into, okay, we're going to set a deadlift record on a deadlift bar, but the plates now can't be anything but calibrated plates. So it's kind of like we're going more down a powerlifting direction with the bar being standardized. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. And I think there's an argument for both sides of it.
I agree.
Where, I totally get it. Having like if you're going to do it, it's apples to apples, right? So it's like you're doing it with this bar specs, these calibrated plate specs, this setup, this is the equipment you're allowed. And that's standardized. Like a log, I could see that too. It's kind of the same thing. But the interesting part with the log is the handles could be slightly different.
Yes.
Right. So or the wood texture could be slightly different. Like there's little variables that I don't know if you're going to ever be able to 100% completely control,
But like I set the American record on a Slater log.
Yeah.
Right now I can think of 3 guys off the top of my head that if I had to say one of these 3 guys could do it if they wanted it, I would hope that athlete, given the opportunity, would say, for me to do this, I need a wooden Slater log.
Sure.
I think the athletes need to make those judgment calls, but I also feel like world records are now becoming, and this is going to be a real rough comparison, but it's the only one I can think of, are now becoming like participation trophies in strongman because there's there's so many obscure things. Like I'm going to hold this 16-pound anvil for 2.5 minutes. No one's ever done that before.
Well, and this is what I've said before. I said before, titles, to me, early on, titles made sense. Once you have a title, nobody can take that away, right? But if you go after a record, and I mean, you could change something slightly, and then technically it's a new world record, right?
So that's the participation trophy,
exactly, and that's where I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think that. I don't think that you should change, okay, well, on this one thing with these specific implements, there's a world record for that. And then if you change it a little bit and do this, then that's a new world record for that.
Exactly.
It gets, the water kind of gets a little bit muddy, and there's too much of that, I think, within the sport. So it's interesting, though, your take, because you are a record holder technically as an American with a log press.
Yes.
But you said that it's taking away from your overall performance. And I think that's interesting because you're thinking about being well-rounded.
I am. And it was the log press, I admit, was probably the world log press record would be the easier I have 2 records in my sights at some point. The log would be the easier of the 2 for me to take. So that one I probably could.
Okay.
I'm not going to say in theory, with what cleaning a log is, if you can clean a 500 and whatever pound log, that means your hamstrings are in great shape, your core, your upper back. So in theory, that event could help me with other events.
For sure.
But for something like the deadlift, which I had my eye on for quite a bit of last year, that one I noticed very quickly. Was like, wow, like deadlifting makes you good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
but there becomes a point to where it only benefits you when you're deadlifting.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just kind of like, wow, like I really needed to kind of pull back and focus on getting better at some other things.
Yeah. Which is smart. It's smart. I mean, if you want to be a well-rounded athlete, there's a certain level, that you should probably be able to deadlift.
Yes.
Right. And my main thing, and this is a whole different debate that we're kind of getting into. It's interesting though, is pushing for world records.
Yes.
Right. Like pushing, like for one, I never really agreed with having a contest kind of separate, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to have guys that come specifically to set this world record, but they're not going to do the whole show. So like one of the things, like you brought up Zydrunas, as far as I know, every log record that he ever set, or at least when I was around him, for example, when he did the 500, he did the whole contest. Right. So it wasn't, hey, I'm going to train just for the log to do the log. He did the whole contest. And when I broke for example, when I broke the deadlift record, that was as part of World's Strongest Man. So I had already done the qualifiers. This was in the finals, second day of the finals. And I set a record within the contest. The only reason I set that record is to win the contest.
Yes.
Right. So that's what I had to execute at that moment. And the record was simply a byproduct of trying to win the contest.
Yes.
So I didn't need to necessarily do it outside, but like I said, I'm much more of a fan of, hey, what did you do? Oh, you won this contest, but in the process, you also set this record. That's really cool.
I definitely see your point, and part of me agrees with you.
Yeah.
But there's also, it's kind of like,
there's an argument for the other side. I'm not saying there isn't.
There isn't, and we're getting to a point now to where we have to have specialists if we want to see these numbers keep going up.
Yeah.
Like we have to. I mean, like it just is. Like, I don't think anybody's ever going to deadlift near 500 kilos in a contest, in a full contest. Like, I think I take that back. After some conversations you and I have had, I think you could have done it at one point.
Yeah.
But I also think that we have to acknowledge the fact, like, especially in strongman, we have to be honest with ourselves. We discussed the other night. Didn't you say you pulled like 1060 raw? Was that in the gym, I think?
Yes.
In the gym?
Yep.
So let's say I turn around and pull 1065 in a suit in the gym.
Yep.
I'm not going to say I'm a better deadlifter than Brian Shaw.
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
But I didn't do it in a contest.
Well, so still, like, I'm not going to say that I have out deadlifted you. I know you didn't do it in a contest. Sure. Gym lifts don't count.
Yep.
But that is still something I think we lose in strongman, where we're allowed to wear these single ply suits now, or different, like, assistance gear. If some guy comes up and out log presses me and doesn't wear a belt or doesn't wear elbow sleeves, that guy, he's a significantly better log presser than I am. Yeah. And I think we lose sight of that in strongman quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic to get into too. You know, it's what's allowed and what's not allowed, and you know, I think that I've been more on the purist side of it, where, hey, no deadlift suits, no squat suits, you know, take like the figure 8 straps that have come into the sport. I think that's created a very gray area and has really changed deadlifting and strongman in a lot of ways. And I think, you know, that's one of the reasons, for example, like with the Shaw Classic, I'm not going to allow that, because normal straps, right? Everybody's going to be allowed that. No suits are allowed. And then everybody's playing on the same field, right? So I can't necessarily say, hey, I had my suit dialed in better than you, or vice versa, or I'm more accustomed to wearing that. It's just, hey, let's see how strong you are. Just, you know, apples to apples. Here's what you're allowed, because we're starting to see, and with a contest like World's Strongest Man, for example, you may choose to wear a single ply suit, but technically speaking, the suits aren't checked, right? So I could wear,
you're right.
I could wear a triple ply,
you're right,
and you could wear a single ply.
I was getting ready to argue with you, and then I realized it was the Arnold this past year. They checked us thoroughly.
Yeah, no, like, it sounds like that was.
Yeah, no, but then I was getting ready to say, no, you're wrong, and I was like, well, no, you're right.
Yeah,
I was like, my suit, any suit I brought to Worlds or I've used at Worlds has never been inspected.
No, it's more of a free for all, right? So you can do what you want, and you know, I mean, again, it's a completely different argument.
It is
versus what you were going to say with the Arnold. Like and this is as far to my knowledge, the squad at the Arnold this last year here was the first time a suit was ever allowed at the Arnold.
Yes, 100%.
So that's a big change. Obviously, squat is a new event, though.
Yes.
So I'm happy to hear that you guys did get checked, and it was a level playing field there, right?
Oh, they checked us. They gave very specific. They signed the inside of the suit.
Interesting.
Like the person who was checking the suits and the person that was checking your knee wraps, because we had knee wrap requirements. They signed the inside of everything. Just that way, if there was ever any question, all you got to do is hand it to them,
and it's been signed.
Yeah, if it's been signed, you're good to go.
Yeah.
They were extremely thorough there, but I had never thought about that at Worlds. I guess just because I don't cheat. Like I don't. It's not.
But it's not technically written in the rules anywhere either.
I get. You're right. Suits allowed.
Certain times it has been, but it's never been enforced.
It hasn't been consistently. No,
and it also is not written in the rules now.
Yeah, I guess I've never been somebody who, like, I read the rules and try and find anybody who reads the rules is going to look and be like, this could help me because of this.
Of course.
But I've never looked at it and been like, how can I hide? Or just if I'm going to a strongman contest, I've seen every contest I've done at least once in the rules, and it said single ply.
Yeah.
So I've just always in my head, this is the fair thing. It's what we're doing. It's what we're going to do. But not everybody thinks that way.
No, and that's where you kind of open the can of worms. So it'd be better, in my opinion, and all of us are strong enough. I mean, and there is a certain argument, I guess, in certain areas, and there's not an exact answer, right? But if you take suits out across the board, yes, the weights may go down. Certainly, if it's a max lift, if it's something like that, it could change that. But moving forward, it's all the same. Right?
I agree.
Like it's all the same. You're always going to compare. So, again, I'm not in a position where I can write those rules for World's Strongest Man or the Arnold or anything else. But with the Shaw Classic here, we can.
Yes.
Right. So that's the way that it'll stay. I just think it's more, again, from a competitive standpoint. Once you open that box, everybody then is like, okay, now you do have to take it to that level where you're checking suits, you're checking wraps, you're checking, all of that to keep it fair, which I guess you can control. But it's interesting, man. It's an interesting debate. It's within the sport of strongman. Right?
I don't think the debate needs to be if it's okay or not. I think the debate needs to be, is the contest promoter doing their due diligence to make sure the athletes that are playing by the rules are protected.
Sure.
I believe I do. I don't want to say if it's a right or wrong debate. I just think it needs to be consistent for that contest. It can have different rules in another contest. Like,
absolutely.
That's what makes our sport great. But I agree with you 100%. If you're going to allow specified equipment in, you need to check everybody's equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting one, man. Again, I mean, I'm not saying that my opinion on it is the end all be all, but it's interesting to talk and say, okay, well, I am more of I would call myself a strongman purist, in the sense that I love the sport, right? And I love all of the events, but I also love all of the different challenges that the events present.
Yes.
Right. So for me to say, hey, a guy presses a 475 pound log as part of a whole contest, and then turns around and can, lift the stones in a certain way and can deadlift and do all of this other stuff, it means they didn't drop all that other stuff out of their training.
I agree.
To get good at one thing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not to say that going the other way and saying, hey, I'm going to go after this one record lift. I'm going to drop a lot of stuff out of my training. I'm going to go after that. Not that that's not impressive in its own right, because it takes a lot to get to that level.
But it's definitely different.
It's different. It's just different. It's just and I think that's what I'm trying to say, or get to, is that it's just different. So for me, I'm going to be more on this side, where I would love to see athletes do the whole contest, and the winner of the contest is glorified as they're the strongest.
Yes.
Overall, because we've tested all these different aspects of strength to get to that ultimate winner.
Yes.
Versus, okay, over here, we're just doing a one lift. I don't think that that's necessarily the sport of strongman. It's just one lift within the sport.
I agree. I do think you can say somebody is the best at a event.
Of course.
Simply by like right now in America, when it comes to log max, I'm the best.
Yep.
But I also do see these guys that are specialists.
Yep.
Like even like, I have never, I'm trying to think. I have never placed this past Arnold Classic was the worst placing in a log event I've ever had, with the exception of World's Strongest Man 2020, where JF and I had looked at the points and just made a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah.
Outside of that, so I do think the guys that are setting these world records as like, hey, I'm doing this as a standalone would probably still dominate those events relatively well in contests the majority of the time.
I think they could. Now, would they lift as much? Maybe not.
No, I don't think
Maybe not. But again, that slightly lower number as part of a whole contest would, to me, would still be more impressive.
That's the thing. If somebody hits 476 on an American, hits 476 in a full contest, I'm going to be the first one to repost that cat.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say he's got the world record or the American record because he hasn't done the heaviest one.
Yeah.
But that guy, like, that's going to be in the back of my head.
Sure.
It's going to be, God, like, that kid just did that, like, on a second event.
Yeah.
Like, that will be something I will have the utmost respect for and acknowledge.
Yeah.
But I think that's my responsibility as the current holder of that record.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's having the respect. Respect is a big thing.
Yes.
Right. And I'm sitting here. I mean, I brought it up about your record and we're talking about it, and it's kind of stemmed into some interesting conversation on the side. But it's neat to hear you say to me, like, hey, I want to be well-rounded, right? Like, yes, I got that record. Cool, whatever. I want to get better at all these other things to kind of put it together and be a complete strongman.
Yes.
Right. And so for you, where are we going now? Like, what's the next goals? What are you looking forward to? What aspirations do you have that you're working toward?
In terms of strongman, it really, every year I look to improve my placement at every contest I do. So, and this year I will have done a significant number of contests.
Yes.
So for a lot of these going in, it's like, okay, I'm looking at a contest saying, obviously I want a podium, I want to take first, but I don't have anything to push off from saying to measure my progression from, with the exception of like World's Strongest Man, the Arnold, which the Arnold was a massive progression for me. Worlds, even though my placing didn't come out right, I still had a very, very solid contest day.
100%.
And I felt fantastic afterwards. So for me, I'm looking at numbers and I'm like, data does suggest you did better this year than you did in 2021. Cool, we're doing good. And then for the Shaw Classic, looking to improve that position, improve my placement as well.
Yeah.
And then moving forward, the rest of the contest for me this year, it's really setting the bar for next year.
Yeah.
It's really setting the bar. I would like a standalone podium if I were to receive an Arnold invite for 2023.
Okay.
Like, that's already been assigned. I want a standalone podium position. I don't want to split my spot again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, though, that's a great way to look at it. Great way to look at it. And you do have a full, contest schedule this year. And, going into any competitive season, right, you have to have those comparisons. And I think it's smart. It's smart to be able to compare where you're at and look at it. And you did. I mean, in all fairness, man, you had a very good World's Strongest Man campaign, this year. And you and I were in the same group and, had a good battle there, man, really good battle. And, and it was interesting. And I will say that we had a tough group. We definitely had a tough group.
Yeah, we did.
And it was interesting to go through World's Strongest Man this year. And I'm sure that's probably a whole different, whole different thing that we could get into. But I will say that, man, I was impressed by you overall. And I'm very much, what I am looking forward to with you is I'm looking forward to seeing what you do at the Shaw Classic for sure. I think that's an event with some of the strengths that you have and with the 8 events format that being well-rounded and consistent could play, some of the events could play into your favor. And I'm interested to see how that kind of shakes out.
I'm in a lucky position with the log press in particular that my worst, like any given day I can hit a 450-pound log press.
Yeah, which is a good spot to be.
It's a really good spot to be in, and I'm lucky enough that I've been able to pull back on some of my log press training, which admittedly I have. I did it for the Arnold as well.
Yeah.
And focus in other areas, but still maintain something that is well above what most guys are probably going to hit.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's a great spot to be, man. But with a format there, 16 competitors, that's big points on that event.
It's massive.
Right? And if you can go in and kind of set yourself up there, all the other events, if you're consistent with them and you have a couple standout events like that, you could end up in a good spot.
I think I could. I think I'm a top 5 athlete at the Shaw Classic this year. I think
so. You're calling that top 5?
Yes. Well, that would be a direct improvement from last year. So
yes.
5th place would be my minimum expectation for myself.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, I like it. We can revisit that after the show. August 13th and 14th.
Yeah,
but
it's like, so buddy, what happened?
No, I like it. I like it, man. I really do. Well, I've had a fun conversation with you, my friend. This has been a good one. Yeah, I really commend you on your path, and it's interesting to kind of hear some of that background story, right, where you came from and where the mindset comes from, and it's interesting. Like some of your posts, I understand more now your mentality. Like and anybody that follows you on social media, if you want to throw that out, it's
Bobby Thompson Pro Strongman on Instagram.
Bobby Thompson Pro Strongman. So if you're not following him, give him a follow. But some of the stuff you put out there is a little bit deep. It's a little bit deeper, and I understand more now where some of that is stemming from after talking to you.
And it's I put a lot more on Instagram than I necessarily say outward.
Yeah.
I don't talk to a lot of people on a regular basis. Like I enjoy speaking to people, but I'm very selective of who I speak to.
Yeah.
And this is going to make me sound bad, but if you're not somebody I can't learn from, my desire to speak to you drops drastically.
Yeah.
Like that is the entirety of my immediate circle. These are all individuals that are, if are not the best at what they do, they are damn close or they want to be the best.
Yeah.
And I keep that circle because every conversation I have with somebody, I'm either learning something about them, what they do, or myself.
Yeah.
And I think that gets me in trouble because I don't talk to a lot of people because of that reason.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for surrounding yourself with people that make you better, right? And I think that, everybody should strive to do that. And also, individually, you should strive to be that person that makes other people better.
That people want to be around.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that you're giving something back to the people that are in your circle or that choose to have you in their circle. Right. So I think that's a wise way to live, man. And you put out some stuff and, it's motivating in its own way. Right. And I think it's kind of, you show sometimes, making those hard choices. I went in, I got this done, whatever. And that's powerful in its own way. Right. Having that message come out. And it's something that I think, a lot of people can draw from because life is tough. You go through challenging moments, but you can overcome them.
Yes.
And it's ultimately your choice how you let a situation affect you.
It is. And I think a lot of people forget that there's somebody else that needs to see you win more than you need to win.
Yeah.
And that's something we all forget quite often.
That's a wise statement, my friend. Well, I think we will wrap it up there.
Sounds good, boss.
Yeah. So for everybody that tuned in, I appreciate you guys. If you got something out of this, please share the podcast because ultimately that is how this podcast is going to grow and it's going to spread to more and more people. But really awesome message today from Bobby and, some of the stuff that he had to go through, some, thoughts and, perspective that I took something away from. I hope you guys did as well. If you've got any feedback, anybody you want to see on the podcast, any questions, topics that you want me to cover, you can email those into AskBRIAN@shawstrength.com. But I hope you all are doing well, doing amazing. So for now, go out and be great, and we'll check you guys later.